Seven o'clock here. I'm going to get going here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Select Board meeting here for August 25th, 7 p.m. As part of our effort to continue using remote meeting, I just have a few remote meeting guidelines to go over and just some rules, and I've got to read a couple of statements and then we can get on with our agenda. Pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, the Governor, March 15, 2020, ordered imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. The various boards and committees representing the town of Grafton will conduct their public meetings and hearings via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. We will be using the Zoom meeting function for a remote meeting. And just some rules and guidelines here. Please note that if you're sharing your screen, that it is being shared with the entire public and is being recorded and will be rebroadcast. So if you do need to share your screen, please be aware that whatever you do share will be viewed. In addition to that, as participants are coming in, panelists are coming into the meeting, make sure that your first and last name is spelled out on your meeting invitation so you may be identified. As chair here, I will call on those that need to be recognized to have the floor. I just ask you to be patient with me as I have to look at a screen and then manage the meeting. Just make yourself known and I'll call upon you to have the floor. One thing that we are going to make a slight change is through question and answers, although we are encouraging the public to participate and ask the board questions when appropriate and applicable throughout our meeting. Last week, we decided as a board that if you would like to be asking us a question, that you use the raise hand function within the Zoom meeting or indicate in the Q&A section that you want to have the floor, and then we can bring you in as a panelist and you can ask your one question of the board, and then we will exit you and put you back into an attendee, and the board can either address the and answer the question or take up other action to follow up with your request. In addition to that, Ms. DeFazio will not be joining us this evening as she had a scheduled conflict. So therefore, I will be asking Ms. Roy, clerk, to be managing the Q&A function of the Zoom meeting, as well as the attendees for those that wish to ask us a question. For anyone who does want to ask a question, we will be asking for your first named your attendee list, or please do so at this point. Otherwise, we'll ask you when you request our attention that you do give your first and last name and address. Okay, going further here. So first up on our agenda, we have a couple of announcements that I want to make.
Peter, do you want to just take attendance real quick?
Yeah, oh, thank you. You reminded me, I knew I was missing something. So for the panelists tonight, please answer in the affirmative that you're present. We'll start with you, Ms. Roy.
Roy, present.
Mr. Often?
No.
Did we lose Mr. Often? Okay, Mr. Prisby?
Frisbee here.
Mr. Often?
I'm present.
Thank you. And Peter Carlson's present. We have one guest with us tonight, Mr. Conker, town moderator. Answer in the affirmative. You can't. Okay. And then.
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Dan. And then we have Miss Rebecca Meekins, assistant town administrator.
Here.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Moving right along here. One second here. All right. And then, okay. A little bit. a couple announcements that I would like to make, please. So early voting for the September state primary is underway at the Grafton Municipal Center Gymnasium. It will continue through Friday, August 28th. Please visit the town website for additional details at www.grafton-ma.gov. Applications to vote by mail must be received by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Anyone voting by mail may leave their official sealed ballot envelopes in the red box located in front of the Municipal Center. Absentee ballots cannot be left at polling locations. They must be received by the town clerk's office before 8 p.m. on September 1st. As a reminder, please note that the Municipal Center remains closed to the public. However, appointments can be made between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Monday through Friday by calling the department directly and scheduling an appointment. Town moderator is seeking 3 persons to serve on a 9-member town administrator screening committee. The charge of the committee will be to oversee and assist with the search and hiring process for a town administrator. Applications are due September 4th. If interested, please send an email to bosgroup@grafton-ma.gov. All right, moving along. Do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
All right, thank you. So first up, I just want to give everyone an update about appointment of temporary town administrator Carter and Carter Terenzini. On behalf of the Select Board and the Town of Grafton, I just want to welcome Carter Terenzini as our temporary town administrator. For those of you who may not know, Mr. Terenzini will be working with all town departments during the search process for a new permanent town administrator. Mr. Terenzini comes with Grafton with over 25 years of management experience and has the Select Board's full confidence to carry out the duties and responsibilities of the town administrator. Just to let you know that Mr. Terenzini will be reaching out to all the departments over the next few days to make formal in-person introductions. And his email address is terenzinic, that's TERENZINIC @grafton-ma.gov. Please, would you join me in welcoming Mr. Terenzini to Grafton? And should you have any questions regarding his appointment, you can reach out to me as chair at any given time. Just to give the board an update, Mr. Terenzini started last Thursday with the in-person introductions to municipal staff and town departments that were present on Thursday. Carter will be going around and scheduling additional meetings with other department heads over the next few days and week to become familiar with and becoming more familiar with the day-to-days that are going on with those departments. He will be joining us for our first meeting, not today, but he will be next week for our September 1st meeting. So he will be in a full attendance, ready to participate for that meeting. All right. And then next up, unless anyone has any questions on just an update and status of Mr. Terenzini, we can move on to October town meeting. Okay. All right, so I have with us Dan Cocker, our town moderator. We asked that he come and start discussing October town meeting logistics and planning. Believe it or not, it's technically less than 2 months away from now. So I've brought Mr. Cocker here, and I'll open up the board. I don't have any set questions or agendas to bring up, but I will bring it up to the board to begin discussion with Mr. Cocker.
Okay. So Dan, hi, thanks for coming. As you know, the last time around we had postponed May's town meeting into July, wondering if we're still planning on doing this in October, and if we are, what the plans are for facilitating the meeting so far.
Yeah, so far we're planning on it, depending on what the state may or may not change. I've asked Candy to give me the last 4 years for the October meeting as far as attendance, so we can get a better idea of number. So hopefully will get that to me in the next couple days, just so we can sort of figure out who's what where. And I've also have a meeting with Ray tomorrow to ask him about, past, but also about, now that he's heading the emergency management group up. So I've asked him to speak with me tomorrow so we can start laying out some of the plans. I also have a call into the Mass Moderator Association just to ask them how they're looking at it for the fall and if anybody's running into any special issues or anything like that. So starting to lay the groundwork now. Probably the gym will be the first part of it. It held 75 at the last town meeting, and could have held a few more than that. As far as social distancing, there was a piece of the gym that was not used. So we probably could get up to about 80. I know Tony LeMay has some numbers that we're going to look at, and then we'll start putting it all together and saying, you know, what's on the warrant? Is there anything pressing that's going to make the demand higher than it is on the last 4 years or not? And then we can start looking at numbers and locations as far as putting things together.
Mr. Often.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Dan, do we know how many can fit in the auditorium?
Well, they weren't going to use the auditorium last time because they would have to climb over each other. So the seating was very limited in the auditorium. I think probably the best two venues would be the gym and then probably the commons area where you could actually, you know, socially distance the chairs, and it's a little more wide open and people have better access to chairs.
Got it. Because I think we had the hottest day of the year when we tried our our
Yeah, it was
summer
hot.
town meeting. I guarantee if we try to do it outdoors, we'll have the coldest day of the year on that particular occasion.
I figured cold and maybe some freezing rain, so I wasn't really thinking about outside.
It'll be that early snowstorm.
Yes.
Ms. Roy.
That was going to be my question. Was there any consideration to moving it outdoors or Saturday? Am I frozen?
No, you just moved.
Could you hear me anyway?
Yes, yes. I really wasn't thinking outside only because of the lateness of the town meeting. Moving it to Saturday, wasn't going to do it on this one. Usually it's a little harder when there was a smaller group to move it to Saturday. And we didn't get results from the questions in the survey that I know Ray had gotten some feedback for. And that's one of the things we want to talk about tomorrow about the Saturday or the not Saturday. How did it work? That's one of the things I want to discuss with him tomorrow.
What survey?
Well, there was going to be a survey. I don't know if he ever did it. He had talked about doing one and just saying, you know, so nothing official, sort of like a monkey survey, and just seeing it. I don't know if he ever completed that or not, but he was trying to get feedback, elicit feedback from people, what they were thinking. So I just want to see if he put anything together at the end there.
Mr. Prisby.
Yeah, and just in picking up on the outdoor thing, I know that one of the issues with having it indoors versus outdoors is airflow, and keeping that air system fresh. Will you guys be interacting and communicating with the Board of Health and taking recommendations from them about what their preferences might be for having this indoors versus outdoors?
Yes, and Ray actually had that conversation, so that's one of the things on our list too, is to talk about capacity, airflow. You know, we had the doors open last time. If we can't have the doors open this time, is it going to affect the airflow? So those are all kinds of questions we're going to try start reviewing tomorrow.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, thanks. So I know the first extra costs of the first town meeting were covered by CARES Act. Is that also included in this, or because obviously the costs were pretty high for that one?
Yeah, well, the cost will be much less this time. It's really the seating that we have probably in the gym and the commons. I'll work with town administrator's office to see if there's any other monies that we could look to in order to cover any additional costs that there might be. I don't think there'll be a lot this time, given that we're using existing locations and we have some of the chairs, you know, the tables, the speaker system is all in there anyway.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Conker, so last time when we had some working groups together for this, you know, we had some participants from the select board, and I didn't know if you felt like if it would help make sense just to have a single point of contact with the select board of one of us to work with you just for logistic purposes and just to understand the flow. I didn't know if that's something that you wish to continue doing what we did for the annual town meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be great. If there was somebody that I could go to on the select board, that would be fine.
Okay. All right.
So if you want to appoint someone, just let me know, Peter.
Sure. Got it. Okay. And does anyone else have any other questions? I guess one question I have, one last question, Mr. Conker, is that do you think it would make sense or help? I mean, we're stuck to having this on Monday per our own charter and bylaw. Would it would you think it would help if we got special legislation to allow us to move it very similar to how they moved the annual town meetings from before, be able to hold them on a Saturday?
It might be something that we want to look into, just see if the possibility is there. That's why I was reaching out to the mass moderator to see if anybody else come up with that as of yet, and see if that is an issue that they're looking into themselves. The association looks more generally at things like this and talk with the state, and so I might get a little more information from them. They haven't been over responsive in the last few weeks, but I think they have a very skeletal staff, and it takes them a little bit to get back.
Okay, I understood. I mean, I didn't know if the select board, and of course, I wanted to ask that to you guys tonight. I mean, do you think that that's something worthwhile that we should be looking at and seeing if we can move it to Saturday, or do we want to keep it on Monday? Ms. Roy?
I absolutely think we should be looking into that so that we at least have the flexibility if it arises that we could move it to Saturday. And I do think that it's the window shrinking of our opportunity to do that. So if we are going to make that decision, it seems like something we should be deciding either tonight, if not the latest next week, because the warrant has to be closes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The warrant for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Meekins, but the warrant closes for citizens petitions on September 4th. That's not for our articles that we would put forth in the warrant.
That's correct, Peter.
Thank you. Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, I mean, even if the warrant were not affected, again, working backward, we're basically 3 scheduled meetings away from, or maybe 4 from town meetings. So we would want to know sooner rather than later. And if we're going to get special legislation, or if we're going to, I don't know, encourage our state delegation to help us with that, then that's something that's got to happen immediately, because those wheels don't turn very quickly, it seems to me.
Peter, what I could do is, after my conversation with Ray tomorrow, I can reach back out to whomever you think is the correct person on the board and just let them, what his findings were, and I can just review that quickly with them.
Is there a member of the board that would be willing to work? I've got a pretty full schedule during the day, and I don't want it to be held up, but I didn't know if there was other member of the board that has the capacity to work with Mr. Conker to assist with just working out logistics, just to represent us on the board. Ms. Roy? Okay. Do we need a motion for that? No, I don't. We'll just go ahead and we'll just have Ms. Roy work with you,
Okay.
Conker.
Great.
And if there's anything that you need on our end, she can coordinate that through us, and that way you have one point of contact there.
Okay.
I appreciate it, Ms. Roy, for stepping up and helping out. And does anyone else have any other questions? So just the takeaway here, we're going to look into seeing about getting special legislation to potentially give us some flexibility in moving the date from Monday to a Saturday. But in the meantime, we're still going to be planning for having it regardless of what day. And that's, did I get that right? Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. If not, we're going to move on to, so committee members asked me, Mr. Conker, to put on just to update the members at large for Town Administrator Screening Committee. So I put this on our agenda. I figure while you're here, some of the members may have some questions for you on this. It's been a while since the town has done this, so I'm going to open it up to the board to ask any questions of Mr. Conker. Ms. Roy, Mr. Prisby.
Has anybody reached out to you to be on the committee yet? And how are you going to decide? And what's the deadline for people to reach out to you?
The deadline is September 4th for them to return an application or interest. And I think there is about 6 so far that have been presented. I will contact and quickly interview each one of the candidates, and then I'll choose from that point on. But I'd say there's roughly 6. If they keep coming in, and I've lost count, I have them in the special folder, but there's about 6 currently.
Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, are there any particular criteria for people that people should be made aware of in case they're applying, things that you want them to point out in their letters of interest to you?
Well, I think part of what I'll be asking is their interview experience, what they know about the town, how they in their professional life or personal life, do they have interview experience? I think we need to get to the crux of experience and tenor and demeanor of the new town administrator. So I'd be asking them questions like that.
Any other questions? Well, that was quick. I don't have anything else. If that's it, board doesn't have anything else. Thank you for Mr. Conker for coming in. Do you have any questions for us, I guess, as a matter? I know.
Not as of yet, but I think the logistics will have a number of questions. So I will be contacting Colleen, town administrator's office, and making sure we're all on the same page and it goes as smoothly as possible. You know, it's different times still, so we'll just do the best we can.
No, I think we're in good hands. I appreciate everything you're doing, Mr. Conker. Like I said, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Roy and anything that you need from us, and we'll get it done on our end.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Have a great night. Yep, you too.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we don't have any resignations, appointments, so moving on to new business. So on tonight, we put on here, review town administrator screening services proposals and potentially vote to award a contract for those services. Just for the committee's sake, I asked Ms. Roy if she would assist in putting together an analysis of the three organizations that submitted bids, and I want to hand this over to Ms. Roy, and she's going to highlight the three different organizations and then answer any questions based on her analysis, and then we'll have a discussion about next steps. Ms. Roy?
So when I read all three proposals, they all seemed pretty similar. They all do the same service. So the things that stood out to me were years of experience. There was between 6 and 25 years between the three of them. The time frame on how quickly each one thought they could get it done, and then the cost. Those were the three biggest differences I saw. There were some uniqueness in the sense of one was saying we should do essay questions versus just standard questions for each candidate. But for the most part, to me, they all seemed very similar. So that's why I just made that chart, letting everybody know, like a quick reference guide. I didn't want to point out what uniqueness was to each one because I thought that was subjective. I didn't want to influence anybody by what I thought was unique. I thought I'd let everybody pick that out themselves. And yeah, just see what everybody else thought.
All right. Thank you for putting that together so quickly. Does the board have any questions? Mr. Hoffman?
Sure. I was pleased with all three proposals. I thought, you know, looking through them, each one of these organizations potentially would do a good job. I thought that although Paradigm has fewer years experience with this, the candidates that they've recruited in those 6 years matched up pretty well, and were a lot of towns in our area. So I really liked that. I really liked their focus on community and department head engagement in helping to get input on the decision. So I really liked that focus. The fact that they're giving us a couple of opportunities in the proposal to gather public input, and they specifically pointed out that they wanted to talk to the department heads, I thought was a really nice approach. The only concern that I had with them in terms of I guess their capability for finding, casting the broadest net is based on their 6 years versus, for example, MRI's 21 years. Do they have as deep a bench as MRI would have? So that was the one thing that I sort of thought about when I compared those two. MRI seemed a little bit more generic and a little bit less tailored. So I don't know. I liked Paradigms myself.
Anybody else? Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, I just want to echo Matt briefly. My experience over the past month or so in speaking with Bernie Lynch was that he just was genuinely helpful and went out of his way to help engage me, enlighten me as to what this process might look like. I also liked their proposal, which was, again, community focused, and it was engagement based. If we're looking for a new town administrator who is going to be community focused, engagement based, and data driven, then it may or may not help that the firm that finds this person is also going to engage in the same approach. Firms come and firms go. In my line of work, you'll have somebody who's doing something for 30 years, start a new firm with somebody else who's been around for 6. That happens all the time in this type of work. So I'm a little bit less concerned with that. I was really happy with Bernie, and I really liked Paradigm's proposal.
Ms. Roy, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I agree. I was leaning towards Paradigm and MRI. Those were the two. I really liked how they broke it down. And when it came down to the time frame that they thought, they landed on 4 months, which wasn't the shortest time frame that MRI had, but it wasn't the longest where Collins was either. It did seem like it was obtainable. I really liked how they laid out each week what we can be expecting, and their price range seemed to fall in line. Where Collins Center, it made me a little nervous that each background check could cost $350, and we don't know how many background checks we might be doing. So that could just add up pretty quickly if we do 10 checks, and now we've added a couple $1,000s. So yeah, if everybody feels comfortable with Paradigm, I absolutely felt good about them as well.
Mr. Hoffman, did you have anything more to add, or?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I don't personally have a sense of the networks that to me, it was between MRI and Paradigm. I'm just interested if anybody else on the board has a sense of that.
Anyone want to answer that?
I mean, only to the extent that, I asked around for people who might be in this business, and both names at MRI and names at Paradigm came up. So it seemed to me that would be sort of probably a similar network. And, the sense I get from this profession is it's a close sort of network anyway. So yeah. I'm sure it's pretty similar.
Yeah. Okay. That was my sense of it as well. And it doesn't bother me that Paradigm is, 6 years old. If I look at the list of candidates, they're all the towns around us, Shrewsbury, Northborough, so they know our area pretty well. They definitely had, as I looked at their map of where they hired, it seemed strongest of the ones that submitted resumes in our area. So I thought their price range was a little bit tighter, and I did like that community focus. I definitely want to make sure, the people that are going to be directly impacted by this immediately are going to be staff. So we need to make sure that we definitely get some interaction with them to make sure that it's a good fit. So I'd be happy going with Paradigm.
All right. So I want to kind of chime in here. I agree with all of your assessments. And the one thing I was kind of putting the two together was the Collins Center and Paradigm's proposals. But one of the things I really liked about the Paradigm proposal is just how they outline the scope and the schedule and the tasks that go along with it. I think, they really provided to me as a consumer for these services on this board, a really better understanding is just organizationally how they would structure the search. And, although they kind of predicted, time limit of 4 months, and it kind of fell like within the sweet spot between the two other competing bidders, I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't take 5 or 6 months. So, and I would think that, the reason for that is that, these things take time, and the timing of this too, I believe, could be challenging for us because, we have, the holiday season to contend with. And then if someone does take this job, do they give, 45 day notice to their employer to leave? So you got to have they can't just start working like the next week. So I think that from that time frame, I'd be willing to bet that if we did go with Paradigm, and it sounds like what the majority of the board wishes to kind of go down, that, I don't think holding them to 4 months is really in our best interest. I think we need to take the time it takes. Okay. So if it takes 5 months, it takes 5 months. If it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. Right. So, and I know that was the target, but I just wanted to state the time frame. The other thing I really liked about that too is just the outline of in Paradigm and how they would go about working with the screening committee and working with them in setting up, reference and background reviews with each one of the candidates. And then upon which they then focus on our role as select board and assist with us with, producing the final interviews and dealing with those logistics. The community participation, I think, is crucial. I mean, our town administrator works with all of our community. It works with everybody. And they're the go-to person when something needs to be addressed. You know, they come to us, obviously, but we only meet an average of once a week. You know, they've got the town administrator there, you know, every single day of the week. So I really think that having that community participation is crucial. One of the things I really like is the staff participation too. So I think that's really important to maintain, you know, the culture within our municipal operations and have staff participate with the process as well and working with producing the finalists from the screening committee. So it leads me to my next question. So I noticed that there's a full scope and a reduced scope from Paradigm, and I didn't know if anyone else had any feelings about what they prefer to do. I didn't really see anything that called out in the MRI proposal or with the Collins Center, but I wanted to just open that up to you guys and get your feel for that. Mr. Brisbane.
Colleen, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Ms. Roy?
I personally would like to go full scope if we go with Paradigm. I say that because when I look at what's included in the additional steps after 7, that's important to me. Helping with the screening of the final candidates, referral for their findings, select board, interviews with the finalists. It's just, there's a lot of important stuff that I want to see happen, and I'm okay with spending a couple extra $1,000, I guess, between 8,000 and 11,000 to ensure that we're getting the best candidate and we're doing it most comprehensively.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when you look at the steps, I was just trying to flip to the steps there. They're talking about a reduced scope through steps 1 through 7. And steps 1 through 7 are preparation and review of applicants. And the preparation part really is the community engagement part and the advertisement, which is advertisement recruitment, which is the drawing the wide net. And then gathering that organizational information, gathering perspectives of the department heads that really make it all worthwhile. So for $3,000 out of a $60, $70 million budget, I'm going to do this once in a decade. Let's do it right.
Mr. Hoffman, did you have anything?
I agree.
Okay, one of my questions I have, I guess, the board, and I want to know how you felt, is just, MRI offered a guarantee. If things were to go sideways, let's say after 8 months, person decides that this isn't the right fit for them, we go through this process again. And I know, these guarantees have caveats to them, but I wanted to ask you all just how you felt about it. Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, I mean, we're in real trouble if we're thinking about getting rid of our new TA inside 12 months. I didn't place a lot of weight on the guarantee that, these firms, they all try to put something in there that's a little bit unique because they know they're all in the same ballpark in terms of cost and scope and all that kind of stuff. That didn't move me at all.
Well, I'll be honest with you. So I wasn't thinking of us, but I was thinking, let's say the person just decides that they have to leave for whatever reason. I mean, that's all, I just wanted to ask that question because that was really the only outlier that I saw with the deliverable. They're the other ones that really called it out. And I don't know how often they have to implement the guarantee, to be honest with you, if they've had to include that into their proposal. But I figured I'd just ask that question to the board and just get their feelings for it. And personally,
Sure.
I'm indifferent.
Interesting element.
Yeah, I'm indifferent, right? I thought that was interesting, and I was curious about just, and when the board read the proposals, just what their thoughts were. All right. All right, if there isn't any other questions, what does the board's wish to do at this point?
I'll make a motion
You
that
want
we
me to
move
make a
forward with.
motion?
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. White.
I move the board vote to allow the chairman to sign the contract with Paradigm for the full scope fee to provide town administrator screening services for the town of Grafton in the amount of $11,000.
Second.
I have a motion made, seconded. Discussion on the motion. All right, so I'm understanding that you're authorizing me as chair to sign on behalf of the board, correct? And, okay, there isn't any other questions. Take a vote. All those by roll call vote. Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Mr. Prisby,
Yeah,
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
and Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried 4-0. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll get that squared away this week. Moving on to select board reports, tier reports. Does the board, before I go into DPW Building update, does the board have any select board updates that they want to share? Mr. Prisby.
so the Affordable Housing Trust will be meeting tomorrow night to go over updates on the rental assistance program. And then the Grafton Sustainability Commission will be scheduled for a meeting a week from Thursday, where the draft benchmarking report will be discussed and hopefully voted on. And then we'll be discussing next steps on both the municipal cost structure and municipal income side of the reports.
Okay. Ms. Roy?
CIPC met last week and they were still interested in meeting with the board about getting your support, getting the board's support from an article on the warrant. So I didn't know if we could possibly add CIPC to the agenda for next week.
Absolutely. We'll work that in for sure, Ms. Roy. So that will be for September 1st. Will the board have an opportunity to have the warrant language in advance of the meeting on the 1st?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do that. Anybody else? I have just one thing. So the DPW Building Committee met last week.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, Mr. Often.
Sorry. So I met with the Disability Commission, when was it? It was last week. And we got a really good update. I just wanted to update the board with what's been happening with rec. So they had that extra budget and some additional resource availability. So Jen Anderson's been doing a great job just moving ahead with doing all of the updates that she can to plumbing, signage, all sorts of different things to provide some ADA accessibility across our play structures in town that are maintained by rec. So she's been doing a great job. She also came with a proposal for some ADA projects that she'd like assistance with funding from CPC. So she's going to be able to put the rest of her budget that she's got left. She thinks she's going to have about 50 grand left from the money that was collected in fees. And so she's requesting the additional money basically to really the focus is going to be primarily on the approach to different recreational facilities as well as the surfaces in the play structure areas. So there's been pretty good progress in that area. So that's looking good. And we went ahead and authorized the chair of the commission to draft a letter of support for that CPC request.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry for listening over you, Mr. Often. Anybody else? Okay, so just let you know, DPW Building Committee met last week. We're still working towards being able to fix up, punch list items and getting certificate of occupancy. We met last Thursday, went over the outstanding components that need to be done, and we're working up a plan to get those resolved soon so we can get the move done before November timeframe. Or I should say before the cold weather starts setting in, and they can get staged and set up to handle winter weather. That says I don't have anything else. Does anyone have any questions on that? All right. Okay. Do we have any tier reports, Rebecca, that you wanted to give us, or?
Not tonight.
Okay. All right. Ms. Roy, correspondence?
There's no correspondence.
All right. All right, so first up on our discussion item here was asked to put on this update on 25 Worcester Street deed to Affordable Housing Trust. So I think, Mr. Prisby, you asked to put this on here. Did you want to have the floor?
I just want to know where we're at. We're supposed to drop a deed. It doesn't take that long. Is council on it?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure. Speak it.
Yeah, so the title was, the title review was pretty lengthy, but they did just wrap it up last week. So Chris in Ginny's office is currently drafting the deed. I expect the board to have it on the 1st.
That wraps it up.
Okay, great. Any questions on that from the board? All right. Thank you, Ms. Meekins, for getting that ready for the board. Next up we had on here was election audit review and update. I know a couple of you asked for this meeting. I know I think the board is looking to just kind of see what's the status, if there's been any, we signed a contract with them, was it about a month and a half ago, a little bit more than a month and a half ago. So Becca, I didn't know if there was something you can give us to the board just as an update as to, where that process is, or if there's any additional things that we need to provide to get it going.
Yeah, no, we had some scheduling challenges with Lauren Goldberg. She's the attorney that we signed the agreement with. I was able to get in touch with her yesterday, and she has a meeting scheduled this week with the town clerk's office. It's unfortunate the timing because the town clerk is knee deep in early voting and trying to get ready for September 1st, and then turning around real quickly and getting ready for early voting for November. So Lauren obviously understands, the situation. She's assured me through Ginny that it should be a pretty quick process once it begins. So, I expect if they kick that process off this week, within a couple of weeks, the board should have something from her.
Great. Any questions? All right. All right, so real quick, wanted to just kind of circle back with the Q&A function Zoom webinar. I just wanted to confirm with the board, it's been over a week, but we're still going to go forward, and I didn't see anyone do this tonight, but we're essentially just going to have people, raise their hand in the attendees list that want to come in and be a temporary panelist and be able to ask their question of the board. They would then be able to leave and go back to an attendee, and then we can either address their question. Is that still how we want to go forward with that? I just needed to double check one more time. Mr. Often.
Yeah, I just have to say it's been really nice tonight to just have a discussion. So I'm digging it myself. I did have a question. If somebody raises their hand and Colin promotes them to panelist, when they're done with their question, then we can make them an attendee again? Is that how it works?
Yes, that's how I understood how it worked. I worked with some of the logistics with the TA's office last week, and I saw Ms. Meekins nodding her head that yes, that is how it would work. Just to let you know, Mr. Often, that what we'll do is we'll have a staff member who's available on the meeting. We can instruct them to make them a panelist for their question. And they'll do that for us. So that way, not one of us is responsible for, having to shift what we're doing from the meeting to logistically. I know it's really quick, but they're in a position to do it faster.
Got it. Okay, that's very good. The other, I guess, last thing on this is we do have the opportunity of just disabling the QA feature altogether so that it's not available at all. So that's something that if this raise hand function works, as we expect, and it does improve the interaction in our meetings, I don't see why we wouldn't just basically remove that as an option.
Okay, I want to make sure we've got the logistics of that down. I just want to personally, Mr. Hoffman, I want to leave it there and just instruct people in the Q&A to just go to raise their hand for the time being until I think people kind of get used to the new normal. But I've been more than willing to shut it off, instruct the staff to shut it off for the meetings. It was just my initial thought on that. Didn't know how you all felt about exercising that transition versus just abruptly shutting it off going forward for the meetings. Ms. Roy.
I like the idea of shutting it off. I mean, get people used to our new system. If we have both systems in place, that could cause confusion. And I think if you wanted to add something to the agenda, at the top of the agenda to say Q&A function is disabled, please use raise hand function if you plan to attend the meeting. That should clarify all the issues.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any questions on that? Well, I just want to say we have our first attendee who has raised their hand. If we want to try this out now, if we could have Ms. Meekins make Justin Wood a temporary panelist to ask his question. Mr. Wood, hi. Peter, just want to recognize you. You have the floor. Mr. Wood, I think you're still muted. Or we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say that prior to my planning board meeting last night, just before it went live, there was some discussion with Chris McGoldrick about this exact feature, and his understanding was this was not possible. So I was just going to say that if this works out, then I would request that we can have the TA's office discuss with him to see, so we can do it for other meetings as well. That's all I wanted to just say and give you a chance to try it out at the same time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wood. So I think we're all set. I see it worked pretty well. So there's our first one, guys. So that was a success. Anyone want to address Mr. Wood's question? Ms. Roy?
Would it be Becca that would be addressing that for him?
Yeah, I just didn't know if the board had any other questions for Mr. Wood. I would assume Ms. Meekins will work with the planner on that request.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
So can we return Justin back to an attendee? Awesome.
We just did that.
Yeah, that worked great.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wood, for asking your question. Ms. Meekins, is that something that you can work with the planner's office on that feature for them in their request?
Yeah, I'll talk to Chris.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, any other questions on the Q&A function? Any other comments? So we'll shut the Q&A function off for next meeting, and we'll instruct people in the beginning of the meeting and probably do some reminders on just using the raise hand function throughout the Zoom meeting for people to be promoted as a panelist to ask the question. All right. Last thing well, we got a couple more things on our agenda, but I want to ask the committee. I was in about before we get to fire department hiring, and I know this was requested by a few of you to have an update on this. I've been in contact with Carter on this over the past few days, and he's reviewed a lot of our conversations over the past month and a half, and has run into a very similar situation in another community that he worked in, and had asked me to request to you, and I want to agree with him on this, is that if we can hold off on talking about this until September 1st with his first meeting here, he'd like to present the board with a memo and a plan to accommodate all of the logistics about hiring the next full-time chief, especially around, do we adopt the strong chief provision? He's got some background on that I think is important for the board to hear. In addition to that, also looking at the logistics and the challenges of making a change to the town charter. So if it's okay with the board, I would like to postpone this conversation to next Tuesday. Any objections? Okay, great. We'll do that. And I'll have more information for you later this week. Okay, so next up, we have our meeting minutes for August 17, 2020.
I move the board vote to accept the meeting minutes from August 17th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
Motion made in second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those by roll call vote. Ms. Roy,
Roy, aye.
Mr. Prisby,
Yeah.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
and Peter Carlson's an aye. Declare the motion carried 4-0. All right. Thank you very much. I don't have any reason to go. There's no reason to go into executive session at tonight's meeting. I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
All those by roll call vote. Ms. Roy,
Roy, aye.
Mr. Prisby.
Yeah.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.